Today on Tricro Studios, we do a high gain amp shootout between the ENGL Fireball 100 and a 91, I believe, Marshall JCM 900, 4100, the 100 watt high gain dual reverb. So yes, the one that everybody hates, diodes. I'd like to reiterate here that this is a high gain amp shootout, so you're not going to hear any type of cleans or any mild jazz or anything like that. This is just high gain geared towards metal. I'd also like to note that the JCM 900 is using an Ibanez TS9 to boost the guitar signal. The ENGL Fireball 100, because people do tend to cry every now and then, like, well, that's not fair, you didn't boost the ENGL. So I boosted the ENGL on the first sound sample and not the second. But I do have two sound samples for you today, the first of which is a somewhat balanced EQ setting in drop C, whereas the second one is a more scoop type setting, and that is in drop B. Alright, so there you go. There are the two sound samples for the high gain amp shootout between the ENGL Fireball 100 and the Marshall JCM 900 4100, the 100 watt high gain dual reverb. So yes, the one that everybody hates. And I still think it's because people haven't really played it loud. But this is an EL34, so it's an early 90s, I think it's a 91 version of the Marshall JCM 900. So at this point in the video, I'd like to kind of go over what I've gained from doing a shootout like this. Now, I do want to also note that I did have the mid-boost engaged on the Fireball 100. The way that I generally do these shootouts is I'll try a whole bunch of things before I actually record. So what I like to do is I will first try the amp without a boost, and then I will try it with a boost, and if it sounds better one way or the other, then I'll probably proceed that way. And then for something like the ENGL, I try it without the mid boost, and then I try it with the mid boost. A lot of the times the mid boost works really well, but sometimes I do find that it'll somewhat brick wall the low end rather easily. So it'll take away from that low end, and you have to do so much to bring it back in, and it just doesn't sound as pleasing at all times. But there's a lot of times when the mid boost will work quite well. But to be quite honest, I thought I would hear a lot of mids and a lot of high end with lacking lows on the JCM 900. I did dime the bass. I had to dime the bass to get it into the territory of the Fireball 100. And then I thought I would hear just a lot more low end and more consistent EQ throughout. However, what I found was they were quite well matched. Definitely quite a bit of difference in the mids and of course in the lows. However, I did find they did rather complement each other from going from one to the other. The Fireball 100 did come across as if it did have more gain to it than the JCM 900. For those who will ask, my lead gain for Preamp Channel B is sitting at 130, whereas my lead gain for the ENGL Fireball, it's an ENGL, ladies and gentlemen, so it's actually sitting at about 10 o'clock. But that's kind of what I did here. The JCM 900, I still say a lot of people that have opinions on it. There's quite a few that have played it, and they're comparing it directly to the JCM 800. So the mids aren't the same as the 800. And there's a lot of clipping going on in order to get a lot more high gain than the JCM 800. So I mean, there's definitely those people who have had that experience, but there's a ton of people out there that have played a JCM 800 in a bedroom and haven't raised the volume. So the volume on my JCM 900 for the master for channel B is actually sitting at about 230. That's generally where I keep it, between 230 and 3 o'clock. I find when you start bringing it down lower, the EQ needs to be raised at that point, and it's not as consistent as it is when it's higher in volume. Just like any other tube amp would react. Most of the times with tube amps, if you're playing them, especially in a bedroom level, which you can get away with, but at that point your EQs are going to be skewed to be a lot higher for the high end and the low end to get to a sound that you're probably going to be looking for. But again, the JCM 900, if you have it the volume at like 230 or 3 or higher, you were going to actually get a pleasing and very, very musical and very usable sound for high gain, especially when it's boosted with an Ibanez TS9. That's really all I have to say here. I consider myself extremely lucky to own both of these amps, and of course all of the gear that I do own. The Fireball 100, it keeps going up and up and up and up as one of my favorite amps that I do own for high gain. I do find it's nice having all of the different options, although I do not see a point where I might use the bottom switch, because that's just like My bass is at 930. It's really hard to bring a lot more low end in the ENGL without it being absolutely crazy. Yeah, it keeps climbing up and up and up, and the JCM 900, I've always used it as like a sort of a secret weapon because it is a rather dark amp, and boosted, the gain is quite pleasing, I mean. Anyway, thanks for watching.